The sun hung like a molten brand over the town of Crow's Hollow, its heat baking the dust into a hard crust that cracked beneath every bootstep. And yet the air felt colder than a grave as people gathered around the auction platform. The sheriff and his deputies watched stiffly, pretending justice lived somewhere in their pockets, while every man in town knew the truth, that justice was as scarce as gold dust and twice as fragile. Cows lowed in the distance, wagons creaked, and the smell of horses mixed with the iron scent of fear. At the center of it all stood a girl, 19, trembling, barefoot, her dress torn at the shoulder where someone had grabbed her too roughly. Her name, whispered behind hands and hats, was Clara May Henderson, the last surviving daughter of the Henderson homestead, wiped out by a debt her father never had a chance to pay. She stood with her wrists bound in front of her, trying to swallow the terror rising in her throat as the auctioneer barked numbers, like he was reading cattle lots. Men circled, more hungry than curious, eyes weighing her like she was a sack of grain. But one man stood apart, broad shoulders beneath a dust-darkened coat, a black hat pulled low, gloves still on though the heat begged for bare hands. His name was Elias Mercer, a cowboy with a reputation that made drunks sober and thieves reconsider their careers. Yet today he watched the scene with a tightening jaw, the muscle near his ear twitching each time the auctioneer called out a price. Clara May scanned the crowd, searching desperately for a miracle that wasn't coming, until her gaze met his. For a breath, the world grew silent. Elias felt something heavy slam into his chest, something he hadn't felt since he buried his baby sister years back. Helplessness. He stepped forward just as the bidding stalled at $2.75, a mockery that dripped with humiliation. Men were laughing, spitting tobacco, nudging one another like they were at a carnival game. Elias's voice cut through the noise like a blade through rope. $3. Laughter died. Head snapped around. The auctioneer blinked, shocked that someone had actually raised the bid. Elias climbed the steps, boots thudding against the worn boards as he reached the platform. He didn't look at the men. He looked only at Clara May, who stared up at him with eyes full of fear, confusion, and something else, something that flickered like hope trying to breathe. The auctioneer slammed the gavel with a grin that made Elias want to break his jaw. "Sold," he announced. $3 for the girl. Gasps, murmurs. A few men scoffed. Others cursed. Elias ignored them, pulling coins from his coat pocket and tossing them onto the wooden table. Without even counting, he knelt before Clara May, gently loosening the rope around her wrists. "You're safe now," he murmured, voice low, steady. "Nobody's going to touch you again." But the moment the rope fell, Clara May let out a sudden, piercing scream, a scream so raw it froze every soul present. Elias's hands hovered midair, startled. The crowd recoiled. She scrambled backward, shaking her head wildly, tears spilling from her already swollen eyes. "No!" she cried, voice splitting with panic. "Not you, please, not you." Elias stiffened, confusion and alarm flashing in his eyes. The crowd exchanged whispers, startled. And in that moment, as her scream echoed across the dusty square, it became clear. Clara May knew something about Elias Mercer, something nobody else did, something that made her more afraid of him than of the men who would have bought her like livestock. The wind shifted. The entire town held its breath, and Elias, still kneeling before her, whispered, "Clara, what do you think I've done?" Night settled over Crow's Hollow like a heavy blanket soaked in dread. The sky bruised purple as the last embers of daylight bled out behind the hills, and though the townsfolk had scattered after the dramatic scene on the platform, their whispers clung to the air like smoke from a dying fire. Elias Mercer walked beside Clara May with a careful distance, not daring to touch her after the scream that had rattled him deeper than any bullet wound he'd ever taken. She limped slightly from exhaustion, arms wrapped around herself, shivering despite the heat still radiating from the wooden planks beneath their feet. Elias led her away from the town square toward the livery where his horse waited, its dark mane glistening under the lantern light. The horse snorted softly, sensing Clara's fear, and Elias murmured a calm word to soothe the animal. Clara's eyes darted around, every shadow a threat, every voice from the nearby saloon a warning. "Clara," Elias said gently, turning to face her, "I ain't gonna hurt you. I didn't buy you. I bought your freedom." But the girl flinched like the words themselves struck her, stumbling back until her shoulders hit a wooden post. Her breath came fast and rough, and tears streaked down her dust-covered cheeks. "Don't lie," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. "I know who you are, I know. What happened at Blue Ridge Canyon?" Elias froze. The world seemed to tilt, the lantern light flickering as if it, too, feared the memory Clara had touched. Blue Ridge Canyon, the name alone felt like a hot poker pressed against old wounds he had never healed. He stepped back, removed his hat, and dragged a gloved hand across his face. "Who told you?" he demanded quietly, though not in anger, more in dread. Clara shook her head. "My brother," she whispered. "Before he died." A hush fell between them, the night air thick and unsteady. Elias felt the ground shift beneath his boots as if fate itself had decided to twist the blade deeper. Clara's brother, the Henderson boy. He remembered the ambush, the dust, the gunfire echoing through the canyon, the chaos that wasn't supposed to happen. He remembered riding in, answering a call for help that turned out to be a trap. And he remembered the boy, scared, bleeding, begging Elias to get him out. He had tried. God knew he had tried. But 5 men with rifles pinned them both down, and only Elias made it out alive. "Clara," Elias said, voice deep, raw, "I didn't kill your brother." Her breath hitched, her knees weakening. "But he died because of you," she whispered, barely audible. Elias swallowed hard, pain tightening across his chest. "I couldn't save him," he admitted, guilt washing over him like cold water from a broken well. "But I brought his body home, buried him proper, and I swore to keep watch over what was left of his family." Clara's chin quivered, her body torn between fury and heartbreak. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Elias looked away, jaw clenched, so tight it hurt. "Because the truth don't always heal," he said softly. "Sometimes it cuts deeper." She stared at him, eyes burning with questions she was too afraid to ask. The silence between them stretched, thin until a sound broke it, the distant thunder of hooves pounding against the dirt road outside town. Elias's head snapped up. Clara stiffened. Lanterns from the saloon flickered as shouts rose. 3 riders stormed into Crow's Hollow, wearing dust-coated vests and pistols strapped high, bandanas covering their faces, men Elias recognized instantly. The same men from Blue Ridge Canyon, the same ones who had tried to kill him, and the same ones who had shot Clara's brother. "Clara," Elias said sharply, grabbing her arm this time because there was no room left for gentleness. "We have to go, now." She gasped, stumbling as Elias hauled her toward his horse. "They're here for you?" "No," Elias growled, tightening the saddle straps. "They're here for you." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. "Why me?" Elias boosted her onto the horse, swung into the saddle behind her, wrapped one arm around her.